Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest UKCCF podcast. Slightly different arrangement today. My co-host has left me, deserted me, and joined as a panellist. So, Chris, welcome.
Yeah, I got the ladder up, leapt over the fence, Trevor, and I'm here to be a panellist for a change. Very excited.
Nice to have you join us. But we're joined today by two people from an organisation called Kerv. We've got Paul Cox, who's the senior CX consultant. Hi, Paul.
Good morning. And
we're also joined by Graham Segers, who is the go-to-market lead for public sector. Welcome, Graham.
Hi, Trevor. Thank you.
Lovely to have you all join us today. So I think what we'll do, let's kick off with the first question. And that one is, with the rise of CCaaS platforms, how has technology shifted the dynamic between employee experience and customer experience in contact centres? Who'd like to start with that one?
I'm happy to make a start. So I think one of the things we've seen a lot of over the last 10 years, I guess, is more and more automation. Self-service is king, and therefore we've seen a lot of CCaaS platforms focus on voice bots, chat bots. How can we encourage more people to self-serve? Because obviously the cost to serve is much lower than putting them through to a human agent. The effect of that is that self-service is very good at easy stuff and not so good at complicated, non-standard things. So it means that the interactions that get the way through to a human being, on average, become more and more complex the better that the self-service gets. So a self-service win is almost a stress factor for the agents. And so in probably the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen a shift in focus back the other way, where there is more emphasis now on EX, so assisting the agents to help them to try to reduce the complexity of those interactions, to help them on their way. So things like knowledge management, things like co-pilots monitoring what's happening and making suggestions to them as they go, things like summarization, etc. So all the kind of the next best action stuff that we've seen, and it's very much redressing the balance, in favor of the agents again, is the argument there. So that's my initial take on it. Chris, I don't know if you've got a view that counters that.
It's a really interesting dynamic, because I think when CCaaS first poked its head around the corner, it was very much taking an on-prem piece of tin and putting it in the cloud. But it's allowed the facilitation of the development of the platform and how we can then add all the technology you've described into one place. And it allows, because all the journeys are sort of coming into a sort of centralized point, creating that, I suppose, almost the truest and sort of version of omnichannel that we sort of all tried to aspire to, perhaps in the good old days. It allows you to get that much more single view of the customer and be able to sort of switch between the channels. I think the key thing, though, from an agent perspective, is to be really that an organisation. This is what we all as the two organisations do very well, is help organisations deploy this technology well, so that you minimise customer effort, channel shifting, etc., as much as possible to get the customers to the right place as quickly as possible. But that's certainly the helping agents have a great experience, but also then help them deliver great service to the customer very much gets facilitated by the ongoing development of CCaaS.
I think just to add to that, I think touched on sort of consolidation to a point, but CCaaS platforms have really meant a consolidation of technologies as well. And so in doing that, we've then we've had to look at EX and CX through a single lens almost. We're not looking at separate technologies supporting EX and CX independently, but one platform that effectively is running a sort of real-time feedback loop that supports CX at one end, that rolls all the way through to supporting EX at the other, employee experience at the other. And to your point around sort of the integration and providing contextual information, that's come through the ability to integrate one single CCaaS platform with multiple data points within an organization. So we're getting that richer data, making that available to the agent, supporting the customer experience.
I think it's combined a lot of stuff together, hasn't it? Where you'd have your telephony, your CTI stuff, and then you'd have the WFM over here and the gamification over here, etc.
Yeah,
you've got that all sort of bundled into one.
Yeah, and blending the resource. So, you had the different channels. So you had chat running on one platform, voice running on another platform. You even had an IVR sitting independently from the voice routing. So to bring all of those together means that you've got these levers that you're now able to pull intraday within the contact center, that makes it more efficient than it could have been previously.
There was a touch of looking back in the good old days there, Graham.
Good old days.
Yeah.
More violin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So many organisations focus on CX features in CCaaS platforms. What tools or capabilities should they be leveraging to elevate EX alongside CX?
Yeah, it's a good one for you, Graham, to kick off with, I think.
So I think Agent Assist or Copilot, so Copilot sitting as a sort of common term across lots of platforms, and making knowledge available to the agent to support them, is not only has a CX impact, because we're obviously lifting the knowledge or the accessibility of the right information or the right answer to the agent, but it obviously supports the agent themselves and their ability to be able to be confident in answering the question effectively. But that comes through the availability of knowledge and then the data that might be accessible. But Agent Assist, taking a huge knowledge base and presenting the appropriate component, not necessarily a page or a set of paragraphs, but simply a phrase or a paragraph or a couple of sentences to the agent to support them in either next step or a piece of information that needs to be provided based on the real time analysis of that interaction, is one I think that we're seeing has got a great take up in the market.
And I think one of the great benefits of this is that there has been, particularly post-pandemic, a rise in attrition for agents, and I think there's a number of reasons behind that, particularly the fact they're dealing with more complex inquiries, perhaps more angry customers, should I say, or people who are a bit more frustrated, because by the time you've got there, that's where you've ended up. And because you're giving agents the tools to be able to deal really effectively and surface the information really quickly, you're helping alleviate perhaps some of that stress, because they've got the knowledge that they're getting the right information to the customers in a very timely manner. And of course, from a business perspective, your reduction in handle time, reduction in attrition means less cost to recruit. So there's a lot of upsides that come with that Agent Assist piece.
But then following on from that, you've got, just to literally follow on from your point, sentiment and interaction analytics, the ability to understand the empathy of a interaction, both from a customer and agent perspective, and identify that it might have been a difficult call. And the fact that, we might need to put our arm around the agent and support them, to ensure that they're comfortable, or we might present them with a couple of simpler calls to give them some time for respite or some well-being time or something like that. So the the insight into those interactions and the impact they may have on an agent has become really sort of important to many organisations.
I think a slightly different angle to this that we've seen quite a bit of is using AI right at the beginning of the call to understand what it's about. And this applies to chat as well, to be honest. So we're asking the customer, how can we help you? We're identifying exactly what it is that they're trying to contact us about, the challenge that they have. And then we're using that to decide which agent should we give that to. And again, we're using AI in that position. The AI learns what sort of interactions each of the agent is good at, and then gives them more of the things that they're comfortable with and fewer of the ones that are perhaps outside their comfort zone. So there are many different ways, I think, that AI can assist to kind of make things a little bit easier for the frontline teams.
Great, thank you very much. So what data from CCaaS platforms are most valuable for understanding and improving the employee journey? From a CCaaS vendor perspective, what innovations are on the horizon that could help organisations better integrate EX and CX strategies? That's an interesting one.
Yes, that's quite a few questions.
There's a lot to unpack there, isn't there?
Yeah.
So I think, first of all, in terms of the really valuable data that perhaps we've all discovered over the last 5 years or so is the content of the conversations that our customers are having with our agents. And whereas I think before, when we were looking at analysing contact centre performance, we always looked at what was your average handling time, what's your average speed of answer, and things like that. Now we're a lot more focused on, okay, so what exactly is it that this person wanted to talk to us about? What was their sentiment? What was their mood at the beginning of the call? And how effective was our agent at improving their state of mind during the call so that they go away happier than they arrived? And it's a useful data not only from how are our agents performing for identifying things like knowledge gaps, but also from a product perspective as well. So if we know that we're getting an awful lot of people that are saying perhaps negative things about a particular product we've just launched, or if we've got a lot of people who are saying that perhaps one of our online processes is really causing them trouble, then we can very quickly get to the bottom of that. And it's the sort of thing that we always struggled with in the old days, with trying to ask agents to select multi-level outcome codes at the end of each call, almost fill in a questionnaire at the end of the call telling us everything it was about, which was deeply unrealistic and hugely inaccurate, whereas now we can get to the absolute source and find out exactly what our customers said to us and start running analytics against that. So I think, to answer part of the question, that's certainly been a huge breakthrough in the work that we do.
I think you're so right, and I sort of reflect on what you said there about those days where we would give agents a wrap time to decide what the call was about and write some cohesive notes about what the customer had said and what they'd done, etc., at the same time pressuring them to keep that wrap time as low as possible, and if they didn't, we're going to beat them up about it. And now what you've got is this. I think this data is possibly some of the best that you can get. Is actually, you get the AI absolutely understands what the call is about, summarizes it, so the next agent has all the information they need to speak to that customer the next time they call without them having to repeat themselves. And I think if you ask a lot of people, or a lot of consumers, what the single most frustrating thing is that they have to keep repeating and keep explaining the same thing over and over to the company that they're dealing with. So, but again, it's all about how you deploy them and actually making sure that information is surfaced readily when that call comes in.
Same theme, but more to do with the interaction itself, I guess. So this sort of concept of journey analytics So we've got a view, a lot of the journeys now are obviously starting online from a self-service perspective and then making their way through to an agent, either by design or they've failed in some way to complete the self-service journey and need some support. So they've jumped out of that to assisted support. But to give the agent a view as to what that journey has looked like up until the point that chat or that call has been passed through to the agent is great as well. So yes, your points are around previous interactions, but also the interaction that they are currently in as well to give insight on that has been important.
I think the other thing to note is that, and we work with customers quite often, is to actually help them design what that setup and that deployment looks like, because there's always a temptation, and we see this often with organizations. They go, we've got all this stuff that's going to push information to the agents, let's reduce the training, let's reduce the information we have, and therefore reduce time to competency. And actually that's a really dangerous strategy to take, simply because you still need to make sure your agents know things to be able to talk to customers about.
Yeah, very much so. Okay, next question. In a world of cloud first, AI infused contact centers, what advice would you give to leaders trying to balance tech investment between customer facing innovations and tools that serve the employee? That's an interesting one.
So I've definitely got a strong take on that, because I believe that you absolutely have to look after your teams, look after your frontline teams if you want to have happy customers. And it is very tempting to focus everything on the CX aspect. How can we make communications lower effort? How can we make them more convenient, 24/7, self-service at the touch of a button? But when things do go wrong, is when customers need you most. And that's the time when they're going to have to speak to a human being. And if you're not investing in supporting those agents, not only so that they can competently complete their role, but also so that they're happy and motivated, and they don't have excessive stress levels, etc. If they are comfortable in their role, and they have that concept of relaxed competence where that they can really perform well, that's when customers are going to really feel the difference. That's when people are going to say, hey, I had a great experience from that company. So I absolutely believe in the CX technologies. I think that's all important, but you mustn't do it unless you focus on your agents as well.
I think we've seen the industry, AI, and some of the sort of conversations that we've had with our customers and prospects, etc. AI has almost been forced on them, and they've been finding a reason to implement something associated or related to AI, and it's not always been with the best interest or the correct interest or correct design methodology or approach. So what we have seen work well is using sort of analytics to identify where those AI opportunities reside, and also to give us some insight into what that design should look like. So an organization, in the public sector, sat down and put a bot on the front of all voice calls, so the front of the IVR, and just listened. And then they were able to identify all call reasons over a period of time, and then build out the appropriate AI bot to support the IVR and basically reduce the flow of the IVR, and also transfers, etc., from incorrectly placed calls. So yeah, design is really important, and doing it for the right reasons is hugely important. But also continuous improvement. So these CCaaS platforms are continually evolving with time. So putting the right methodology, investment and people around the platform to ensure that you're taking advantage of the technology over time. You might sign a 3-year contract with a CCaaS vendor. In 3 years' time, the technology itself and the environment will look very different. So you've got an opportunity with CCaaS to really sort of take advantage through continuous improvement or value realization, whatever you want to call it, to take advantage of that investment.
I think for me, the thing that I've always said is that CCaaS, and now CCaaS with AI, is an enormously powerful tool. It can do a lot, and you've got to really start thinking about the things you're trying to solve. What are your problem statements from day one, and really understand where you want to go, rather than sort of taking I've got these tools. What can I do with it? It's so powerful that you can get so easily lost in that, and that's why we're working.
Approach,
you take tech first approach. And that's why we're working with customers. We both take the same approach. So we'll sit there with the customer and say, right, what's keeping you up at night? That's your first point of view, and then start blending in sort of your 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plans for the business. But as Graham, you said, you've got to keep in mind that what CCaaS does today and what it's going to be doing in 5 years' time and 10 years' time is going to be remarkably different. This technology is moving at such a pace, but investing in time, I think, is the key. I would suggest in getting that design right and really looking at where it can assist, both agents and customers for the good.
I think it's a really, really interesting point, and where we started today about looking back a little bit and saying, what was it like back in the olden days of on-premise systems, where people would implement something and the technology would stay pretty static for the next 3 years, and then maybe you have an upgrade, maybe they hadn't even changed then. Now it's not only that we are trying to keep pace with the technology and get the very most value out of this technology, where the goalposts are constantly moving, but also from a sort of consultancy point of view, we have always in the kind of the olden days, we can say, right, we have implemented this exact feature, this exact technique for 50 other people, and it's tried and tested, and this definitely works. Whereas now we're saying, okay, there is now a new technology that's only been around for 3 months, and the way that we have to advise and guide customers is very, very different, because we simply don't have that kind of base of experience yet, because it's just moving too fast. So it's a different dynamic, I think, today than it was, even just 10 years ago.
Okay. So do you think, is there a risk that digital transformation efforts can focus on customer self-service and automation can actually lead to more complex, stressful interactions for agents? And if so, how do we design for both?
This is one that was very, very close to my heart, actually, because it's all about the customer journey, and you've got to know your customer journey and really sort of, when you're designing it, understand what the friction points are, what the frustration points are, what the effort points are within those journeys. People, for a long time, organizations have talked about giving people choice, right? And this was the thing. Why do we have all these channels? Why do we keep adding channels? Because we want to give customers choice. But with that, you've got to design that choice so that everything works, no matter which choice they pick. And the danger that you have in some of these designs is that you design certain things will work on certain channels, and customers go down a route where they might try, you'll see, I'm your bot and I can help you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then you go, oh, fantastic. You start asking the question and you go, sorry, I can't answer that. You need to speak to an agent. Shall I transfer? Yes. Sorry, we're closed. And that sort of customer kind of interaction, people just go, hang on a minute, I've just wasted 5 of my precious minutes trying to find out information. If you just said, I can do this at the start and I can't do this, it's that channel shifting without purpose. If you're going to offer things, you've got to be clear about what each can do. And that, I think, just blindly going into digital shifts without thinking about the journey and what can be achieved, and does it actually work, and how is the customer going to react? Because remember, you've created that frustration, and eventually they get through to an agent because you've not designed it right. They take it out on the agent, and that affects the agent experience.
I think there is that there's an interesting dynamic here when we start talking about the stress levels of interactions that agents have to handle now. And I talked earlier on about how if you get the AI to start handling easier interactions and you leave more complex interactions for agents, then naturally their stress levels will go up. Whilst there are definitely people who would argue that actually they're more interesting interactions, and is it more fulfilling to solve 5 really meaty, complex problems in your morning rather than tell 100 people how to, do something very, very simple, or transferring their call, or just typing in some information and saying thank you very much, goodbye. There is definitely a school of people, and it probably a personality type that would prefer the complexity. And equally, there's a personality type that actually needs some of those simpler calls in between the complexity to give them a rest, to give, especially if they're handling, perhaps it's not complex, perhaps it's emotive calls, and they just need that rest time. So using routing strategies that can focus in on not overloading people with a certain type of interaction, putting thresholds on this can be absolutely key as we load more automation, and the difficulty level starts to go up. And certainly over the last few years, that's the only direction it's gone.
And the amazing thing, Paul, is that this technology allows you to absolutely do that. And so few people, I rarely see that ever in call centers, where you've got that information, particularly when you've got people working from home, so you can't sort of see the stress in people. So the system's identified that agents had a bad call, so we've got to do something about it. So it might get identified and flagged to a quality person somewhere, but you've got the opportunities to say, he's had a bad call, let's not give him another one immediately afterwards.
Absolutely. And I think you make such a good point about home and hybrid working, that we can't see when someone's upset. We can't just go and take them off the phone and, sort of figuratively put your arm around them and just look after them. So we have to be far more careful with people now than perhaps we did when everybody was, in the office 5 days a week.
I think, make no mistake, as every organisation has an obligation for the well-being of their employees, and it's not just about the price of someone going off sick or someone leaving because they can't. That well-being, if you're not looking after them, you could end up in a lot of bother quite quickly.
Okay, so I think we've got time for one more question, and that's, how should EX be factored into the selection or configuration of CCaaS solution, especially when organisations are focused on omni-channel CX? Who'd like to start with that one?
Goodness, okay. So I absolutely agree with Chris that multiple channels increases complexity, and it's a little bit similar to what I was talking about before, where some people really like the variety. Some people like lots of different channels, and some people like fewer. And I think, probably to Chris's point earlier, the amount, so that the channels that people work on, and the number of concurrent interactions, for example, that they can take, is something that when you're choosing a platform and you say, great, we can overload our agents, we can blend all these different things together. It's another factor that I would say you ought to consider, is what effect does that have on the agents? Can some agents handle this? Can other agents, it's going to be a real problem for them? So again, I don't mean to repeat myself about the ever increases complexity and stress levels, etc. But I think you have to consider the human factor. You can't just look at, okay, here's a spreadsheet that says that if I can blend all my channels together and I can make people handle 4 web chats at once, and et cetera, I'm going to have this fantastic ROI. You have to consider that if I do all that, is it going to break the people? In which case there's that balancing factor that says, take the ROI, but consider how realistic that is for your people, given the complexity of the interactions that your specific business or organization has to handle.
Simplicity comes into that, I think, a little bit. So, Paul, when we deploy CCaaS solutions, the adoption, considering they're moving from a legacy technology that might be quite old to what is brand new, the adoption's a very short window, isn't it? I mean, the training agents are taking 2 hours training, and then they're completely proficient, really, in making their way around the CCaaS platform within a morning, a day.
The difference in ease of use is chalk and cheese compared to the old school systems we used to be deploying. Yes, absolutely.
But then there's the consideration, we do that sort of time in motion study as to there's 5, 6, 7 or more other applications that the agent has to dip into. We've got multiple windows open on their browser to access the different applications they need access to. So there's a consideration there. There's this concept of a single pane of glass that sounds great, but hardly ever gets deployed or deployed effectively, because how can you give all of that information effectively within a single pane of glass? So sometimes there's this push towards what seems to be simple and a better way of working, but it creates more confusion, more complexity for the agent at the end of the day. So I think looking at it from a point of view of the agent and how they are having to operate day to day, in reality, is really important when you look at the question around configuration of a CCaaS solution and which CCaaS solution you're selecting and how that fits within the ecosystem that you're looking for it to work within.
For me, it's really, we're going to use the word simple again. It is a simple thing, this, in my mindset, in that everything you do in the development and the design and the deployment of these CCaaS platforms has a direct effect on the agent first and foremost. Okay, and you get agents who if you get that wrong, your agents are going to get screamed at, are going to have a bad time of it. It's as simple as that. And I don't think ever or very rarely will get upset with an agent on a phone, because I know that anything they're saying to me, anything they're doing, the way they're trying to navigate systems, none of that is their fault. That's all been given to them by the guys that have designed this and deployed it. And the trick in all of this, it doesn't matter how good you could have the best CCaaS platform in the world, you could have the most mediocre CCaaS platform in the world, right? But it's how you've deployed. If you deploy it well and you put your agents, how they're going to use it front of mind, because they're the ones that are going out and facing off to your customer base. And so if you want to give them great customer service, if you want to give your customers great customer service, you've got to give your employees and your agents a great experience and great service. And if you show them that you're putting this front and center, you take them on the journey through that deployment, that they recognize, actually, we're doing this for you. We're not just deploying AI because that's a business where you want to save money and we want to get rid of you guys out of the contact center by 20%, 30%. Actually, we're putting you front and center. Your experience working for our organization is going to be better by doing this. And we've thought carefully about how you're going to use this and how it's going to impact you. You're going to win.
Absolutely. And it's a kind of a key point that, therefore, when designing the solution, including those agents, agent groups in your design process is absolutely key. So, help them to be part of that design by getting them involved, I would say.
And I think also, Paul, is seizing the opportunity, isn't it? That as I said earlier, you've got a really powerful platform. Think about, it's not just about importing what you did before. I've seen people who have taken legacy platforms with 200 disposition codes and goes, right, we've got 200, we need to put them into the CCaaS platform. What are you talking about? Why do you want to do that? Let's seize the opportunity to leverage the opportunity you have with this really powerful technology that's available to us.
Yeah, I think as a kind of a closing piece for me, I would say absolutely. I know that it will take longer to implement, but 100% agree. Please don't just go like for like. Don't try to recreate a legacy system in a new CCaaS platform. Just really take the time to do a little bit of transformation, to design things properly and take advantage of the new ways of working.
Great. Okay, well, I think that's time, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Really good content there. Really enjoyed it. So I'd just like to thank Paul and Graham from Kerv for your time and input. And Chris, as ever, thank you very much from CGI. Thank you for your input as well. It's been a pleasure to chair today's session. I think there's been some great insight there. And we look forward to seeing you at our next podcast. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you.
Thank you.